It says in Sefer Bamidbar regarding the war with Midian. Vayomru el Moshe, and they said to Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom, Abadecha, your servants, nas'u et rosh anshe milchama asher beyadenu. What does this mean? Literally, they counted the heads of the men of war which are in our hands. It's an interesting way of putting it. The men of war in our hands. Velo nifqad memenu ish. And not one solitary man was lost in battle. It says in the Yerushalmi that the generation of David HaMelech alav shalom, King David, were all righteous. This was an extremely righteous generation. Unfortunately, there were some, we'll call them slanderers, among them. What was the net result? Is that they would fall in battle. The generation of King David. On the other hand, you have the generation of Ahab. All they did was Avodah Zarah. It was a very bad generation. But none of them spoke slander. And we're told that they would go out to war, the generation of Ahab, they would go out to war and win. What this shows us, for a start, very clearly, is the severity of the sin of any kind of slander, rechilut, lashon hara, and so on. It can even make those wasaddiqim fall in battle. I mean, that's huge. We should think about that, just how great that is, or how bad it is. So, Hachamim ask in the Gemara of Ketubot, why are the fingers of the hand the shape they are? Have you ever thought about it? If you haven't studied the Gemara, they're fatter at the bottom and pointy at the top. Yeah, the Gemara asks, why are the fingers of the hand this shape? And it answers that they're like pegs, because if a person should hear something that is inappropriate, stick them in your ears. We have to be very particular not to hear, let alone not to speak, not to hear inappropriate talk. By the way, that's also why the lobes of the ears are soft the way they are, so you can push them up and they hurt a little bit, which makes you realize that it's a bad thing. When you hear something bad, you cover your ears. Now, we see from this that the true weapons of war, when Bnei Yisrael went to war with Midian, and in any war which help us succeed in battle, are what? The tips of the fingers of the hand. Let's look at this verse again. Let's look at this pasuk again. Vayomru el Moshe, and they said to Moses, Abadecha nasu et rosh anshe milchama, the people, your servants, counted the heads of the men of war, the soldiers, if you like, asher beyadenu, which are in our hands. Says that's what it is. The men of war that help us win the war are our fingers. And where are they? In our hands. We have to use them to ensure that we don't hear anything inappropriate. All right, let's continue on that line. The parasha of Devarim, that is always the parasha before Tisha B'Av. Why? Different explanations. One of them is because they have tochahot, reproaches, rebukes. Moshe Rabbeinu was, as it were, telling off the Jewish people, you did certain things that are wrong. You got to pull yourselves together. Make sure you don't do it in the future. I'm not going to be there with you. You got to make sure that you do the right thing. As a matter of fact, many times in the year, we, out of the land of Israel and Galut and the diaspora, are out of sync with Israel in terms of Torah reading. I think you're aware of that. Why? Because, let's say Pesach. We, outside the land of Israel, have the Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galuyot. We have the additional day of any holiday, most holidays. We have an additional day. And let's say that additional day falls out on Shabbat. So what is the Torah reading for us for that Shabbat? The one for the holiday. But in Israel, it's not Shabbat anymore. I'm sorry, it's definitely Shabbat. It's not the holiday anymore. So what are they reading? They're reading next week's parasha. But we're not going to get to it till the following week. So we're out of sync. Israel's ahead of us the whole time. Till, at the very latest, we're one Shabbat before Devarim. Devarim, Israel, and the world have to be reading Devarim before Tisha B'Av. So then what we do is, we do matot and mas'eh together, which is what happened this year. Okay. It says in Parashat Devarim, speaking about the spies. Now, this is very, very important for Tisha B'Av. It was the Het HaMeragelim. It was the sin of the spies, as I'm sure you've probably heard many times over the last 20, whatever it is, hours, that caused Tisha B'Av. God says, you're coming in and crying for no reason. I'm going to make this day, the Tisha B'Av, that you're crying now that you've come back out of the land of Israel, where you spied it and you saw what it was, and you've said Dibat Ha'aretz, you said bad things about the land. And remember, we're just saying, don't say bad things. It's a very bad thing if you want to win a war. You said bad things about the land. It was on Tisha B'Av. And now, Moshe Rabbeinu is reminding us about it. And he says, وَيِخْهُ بَيَدَمْ بِپِرْيَ آرِس, and they took some of the fruit of the land in their hand. As we know, they came back with these huge produce. وَيُرِيدُ إِلَيْنُ, and they brought them down to us. وَيَشِيبُ أَثَانُ دَبَارٍ, and they brought word to us. وَيُمْرُ, and they said, تَوْبَهَ آرِس أَشَرَ هَشَيْمَ لُكِنُ نُثَيْنْ لَانُ, the land that God is giving us is good. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. That's not what they said. Moshe Rabbeinu is not saying the problem. This is what Caleb ben Yefuneh and Yoshua ben Nun said, the two good guys in the story. They said the land is exceedingly good. And that's what Rashi says on this. He says, the land is good. This is Caleb ben Yefuneh and Yoshua ben Nun. Moshe Rabbeinu is not saying anything about Eres Ocheret Yoshebeha. This is a land that devours its inhabitants. Why? What's going on? He's trying to rebuke, trying to reproach, and he's saying the good stuff? Rabbeinu, Rab Mordechai Eliyahu, alav shalom, Maran Mordechai Eliyahu, former chief rabbi of Israel, of course, has an explanation for this as to why he doesn't mention the words of the spies, only of Caleb and Yoshua. He says, Moshe Rabbeinu is coming here to teach us something very fundamental. And that is, not just what we should and shouldn't say, but we have to know to whom we should listen and to whom we should not listen. And if someone speaks badly about the land of Israel, he should not be listened to. We have men of war to help us, protect us against that. And it would seem to me that this message is very, very pertinent on Tisha B'Av, on the 9th of Av, when we're suffering because of the sin of baseless hatred, sinat hinam. It's a time that we have to double our efforts, not just not to speak, but also not to hear any kind of bad speech at all. Speaking of Rab Mordechai Eliyahu, alav shalom, he was someone who was so particular about kashrut, I can't tell you. There's some amazing stories about him that he was so modest. I had the zechut that he was one of the people who gave me semicha many, many years ago. But such a modest person, you would speak to him, you would sit with him, you would feel that you were the important person. That's how he made you feel. I was a young guy, he made me feel I was important. He was just just somebody sitting there. That's how he was. The stories about him that have come out, they make your hair stand on end. But one of the things about him is he was very, very particular about kashrut. And especially for Sephardim, the whole matter of Bishul Yisrael for Sephardim is a very, very big deal. And there was one story that I just want to share with you. And I want to end with this. And the story is as follows. He was giving a shi'ur to the yeshiva. And they brought him a cup of tea. And if you ever see the shiurim, a lot of them online, he moves his hands a lot. And what happened was he splashed the tea. So they came and they mopped it up very quickly. And then they brought him another one. Now he was very careful. So what did he do? He watched his hands. But somehow or another, he pulled the tablecloth, and again it spilled. He said, no, there's something wrong here. This never happens. And for it to happen twice, there's something wrong. I want you to investigate it. So they investigated it. And they found that a non-Jew had borrowed the kettle. Okay, so what? So if a non-Jew makes water in a kettle, it doesn't make it not kasher. So he said, it's not possible. Look into it even further. they found that the non-Jew didn't boil water in the kettle, he made non-kosher food in the kettle. And because he was so particular about kashrut, they say he was saved inadvertently from doing something. There's a very big lesson here for us. And the lesson for us is very, very simply that if we're very particular to do the right thing, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help us. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps us, then it means if we're all doing the right thing and he's helping us, that we're ready to receive the Beit HaMikdash. Let us make sure that we are at the level where HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to help us, won't let us stumble, and may we all meet again next year in Yerushalayim Abenuya. Amen.